Yes, good morning, everybody. And first of all, hope everyone watching and listening in is safe and well in these very, very crazy times. My name's Clive Woodward, and welcome to my webinar this morning. And we're going to look at the subject called tackling change. Just 30 seconds of my background. I'm probably best known for obviously coaching the rugby team. I had 8 wonderful years doing that. But prior to that, I had 16 years in the business world. I worked for Xerox for 8 years and also ran my own small leasing and finance company. I think most importantly, before that, I am a qualified teacher, which I thought I'd just stress. I went to Loughborough University, did my degree in sports science, did my years cert ed, did my teaching practice at Loughborough Grammar School. Unfortunately, I never went into teaching because the rugby world wouldn't quite allow that. So it's a real pleasure to speak here to the teaching and the education world this morning. So let's crack on. The first question comes from the Queen Elizabeth Academy. And the question was, what are the core traits in sport and business that are needed in education, and how do we actually achieve this? I have this very simple saying, and I use this across sport and business and clearly education, that talent alone is not enough. And I'll repeat it, talent alone is not enough. What do I mean by that? I come across in all sorts of walks of life some very, very talented people, especially in the sporting world, the young rugby players, footballers, golfers, whatever, Olympic champions, huge amount of talent. But I always see that as a starting position, not the finishing position. And what I look for in any person is two things above having talent. Clearly, you can't take people off the street and put them into sort of sports teams or into certain jobs unless they got the talent to actually do it. But it's got to be seen as a start and not to finish. What I think you need on top of talent is two things. And the first is a topic I call teachability. So teachability is a bit of a mouthful, but obviously the education world, it's huge. Quite simply, teachability is your ability to learn. It's your ability to take on knowledge, and quite simply, it's a passion for what you actually do. I really look for players, people who are passionate about what they actually do. When you think about the word teachability, there's so much stuff out there on the internet. Your ability to learn, your ability to do stuff yourself, take personal responsibility for your own learning. There are no excuses anymore, in my view. So, if I'm working with anybody, I'm interested to see what maybe a school or a business would offer someone in terms of support and education. But I also look for, what else do you do? What else do you do as an individual? No matter how old you are, young or old, what actually do you do to actually help your knowledge, and how do you go about capturing it and sharing it with other people? So that's the first thing I look for in terms of a core trait. And the second, on top of having a real passion for what you actually do and being teachable, is what I call attitude. I think attitude is a great word. I think it's a word that I think you're not born with. I think you can coach attitude. What I've done with attitude, I divide attitude into 10 distinct areas. And what I think you can do is coach all 10 areas. So what I'm saying is, I think you can improve people's attitude. So one of the traits on attitude, where I have 10, for example, is punctuality. I don't know where I got it from, but I'm neurotic about punctuality. I think people being on time and understanding the importance of time says so much about a character. So we teach people how what punctuality means, what it actually represents, what it says. Because how can you trust someone who's not punctual? So punctuality, for example, is one of the traits under attitude. And I promise you, I've seen and know so many people who, yes, they've got a certain amount of talent, but they've been able to leverage their talent by really taking ownership themselves through teachability, and their attitude is so strong, their drive for success. And I divide this into 10 key areas. So, there are some core traits in sport and business that absolutely apply to education. And I'm often asked by mums and dads, you've got this talented kid. Dad said, well, how much do they do? How much do they learn? How much are they studying their sport or music or drama? Or do they just leave it all to the teachers? So teachability is a really powerful thing, and the opposite of teachability has been unteachable, uncoachable. And if you've got someone who's a bit of a know-it-all, I think you're going to struggle from the start. So that's my first question to everyone from Queen Elizabeth Academy. The second question I've got that came through is from Bisley Bluecoats Primary School. And the question is this: how important do you think technology and data will be for teachers during their transition back to school? As I said in my opening few words, I have a business background. I make no apologies for that. When I played rugby at the top level for England and the Lions, but that was in the amateur days. So I had 16 years in the business world and all around technology. I worked with Rank Xerox 8 years. I was a graduate trainee from Loughborough. And so I'm kind of, my background is totally around data and IT. And one of my other favorite sayings is whoever wins in IT tends to win. And I'll repeat it. Whoever wins in IT tends to win. And this is so important. But what again, and again, this is kind of linked into my first point about being teachable. The key thing about IT is making sure everybody within your school, your organization, is continually being trained up on the IT world. You can never spend enough time, effort, or money trying to train pupils, teachers, the education world in IT. Often I go into, especially sports and businesses, but I include schools. You kind of go in there, and they're usually quite keen to show me some sort of IT program, some sort of software, which is fine. But I know my first question is always going to be, who uses this? And often it's used by the head of IT or the analyst people. What I'm saying is that's kind of a big mistake. I think the people who should be all over the IT are the headmaster, the headmistress, the chief executive, and you can't just delegate this away. And I see so many people, especially kind of what's called the older generation, my generation, have almost left the IT world behind because they think, well, that's not up to me anymore. I think that's a huge mistake. Because I think the more you understand it as the senior people in the school, either the teachers or the head of the businesses, the more you'll be able to actually understand where this can actually affect, where it's going to help the actual staff or the actual your colleagues or your pupils. But I want as early as possible to get kids, everyone in the business, totally involved in the IT world. There's been a huge amount of training on it, and it's been so important. I think we've never seen it more important than what we're going through at the moment. I'd say the IT world has moved on probably a year or 2 years over the last two to 3 months because people have been almost forced down the IT world. Even running these sort of seminars we're on today, these webinars, sorry, where you're using IT, you're using all sorts of technology. It's not that difficult if you've got a background in it. And it is, to me, the IT world is like riding a bike or driving a car. Once you're in it, it's fine. It's just getting that over that first hurdle. So to answer your question from Bisley, it's so important. And I think you can use the IT world to really help this transition back to school by sharing thoughts and ideas with each other in terms of teachers, sharing them with pupils, sharing them with parents, and using this technology we're using now, the kind of the video conferencing, the Zoom world we're all in now, has been proved a huge success. But don't leave it behind. It's not that difficult, I promise you. Once you really get your head around it, you do some proper training. And also, I think this lovely device here, the mobile phone, has just transformed the way we run. The mobile phone is such a powerful tool now in terms of the technology world, and we're seeing it nowhere more now in the COVID world of where they're starting to track people and test people. Technology is good, but don't be scared of technology. Really embrace it. So, question 3 from Reigate Valley College. They've always done a little bit of homework on me. Your business mantra is thinking correctly under pressure. Can you explain that to everybody? So thinking correctly under pressure, if you think of thinking correctly under pressure, I call it teacup, T-C-U-P, teacup, thinking correctly under pressure. It's one of the most important things that I coach and how I actually coach. So what is teacup all about? Teacup is actually focusing on this word pressure. I think pressure is a great word, but pressure isn't only there in sport, it's in the education world. Everyone's listening in will have moments in their careers where you're under real pressure moments. Could be an awkward meeting with the child, an awkward meeting with the parents. Could be an incident that happens at school. These pressure things happen. The key thing is quite simply, can you plan for this? And I learned this teacup kind of anagram or from an Israeli guy called Yuda Shanir. I pride myself on being totally teachable, what I call a sponge, not a rock. And I heard about this guy, Yuda Shanir, many years ago. And he worked for the Israeli Armed Forces. He moved into the kind of the technology world and the sporting world. And I heard him, someone mentioned to me, to devise this computer program that could measure your ability to win, basically. So to cut a long story short, I got on a plane even to Tel Aviv. And I went to meet this guy called Yuda Shanir, and immediately I had 2 or 3 days literally working with him non-stop around the clock. And his best clock days I've ever had. And he taught me so much. But he came up with this concept that he called seat-up. And I said, what is seat-up? And it's called correctly thinking under pressure. And when you think of the Israeli armed forces, which he is part of, one of the best fighting units in the world, he said, we do so much training on seat-up, which is correctly thinking under pressure. So I got quite exciting. So I thought, okay, shift letters around. We got teacup, which is a great English word. He got really upset with me because you cannot call it teacup, it's seat-up. So we're still speaking, but I call it teacup. He calls it seat-up. And quite simply, it's your ability to think correctly under pressure. So think of a pressure incident in your school and your life, could be at home. Just think of it. But what I'd be saying is, if you could have somehow pre-planned that, thought through what would I do in that moment in time, would you handle that situation better or worse? And I passionately believe, backed up by the most sophisticated data, that if you come across a pressure situation or a pressure moment in time, and that you've actually thought through in advance before how you'd handle it, there's a very high chance you'll handle that situation a lot better if compared with if you're caught totally unaware. So let me give you an example in the rugby world, and hope everyone can follow this through. When I was coaching my rugby team, when I was doing a team meeting or a one-on-one meeting, I'd always have 3 things available, either on the wall in the team room or literally next to me on my desk if I'm doing a one-on-one conversation like this. I'd always have a clock, a scoreboard, and a whiteboard. And what I do in any situation when I'm talking to an individual, I just set up a situation. So just if you kind of role play me for a moment, say I'm talking with the England rugby team, I'd just be talking about whatever we're talking about, and I just stop the meeting. And I did set up a situation. So clock, I put the clock and say, okay, here's a match situation. There's 5 minutes to go. Scoreboard, England 12, Australia 16. So we're 4 points behind. There's 5 minutes to go. And then on the whiteboard, I just set up a situation in the game. So here's a situation. We're 4 points down. There's 5 minutes to go. And I just invite a player up. So just role playing me, Matt Dawson. So I bring out Matt Dawson. So Dawson, out you come. Dawson, better now known for Strictly Come Dancing and Question of Sport, but once upon a time used to be a pretty amazing rugby player. So I bring out Matt Dawson. I just stand there. What would you do? So we're 4 points down, 5 minutes to go. There's a situation. What would you do? Even that situation is a huge amount of pressure because the rest of his team was sort of all looking at him, having a bit of a laugh as well. And he has to immediately say to me, this is what I actually do. If he can't immediately say, this is what I do, we've got a bit of a problem because this is a real situation. This could be Saturday when we're playing against Australia. 4 points down, 5 minutes ago. And I need to know what you can actually do. So he'd actually say, this is what I do. He'd then sit down, probably get a huge amount of abuse and banter from the rest of the team. But we then sit down and really discuss it as a team. And we would not leave the room until we're 100% agreement, this is what we'd actually do. And quite simply, we did this time and time and time again. We documented, we kept studying it. And my learnings from Yuda Shanir over in Israel was basically, if you come across something that you regard as a pressure situation, if you've experienced it before, that's a big advantage. But equally important, if you've actually thought through in advance, what would I do if this was to happen? There's a very high chance, backed up by the most sophisticated data, you will make the correct decision under pressure, teacup. And that is basically it. And it's so simple. And it's an education way. It's a way of learning. I often say to parents, I've got 3 grown-up kids. If they're all listening to this now, which thank goodness they're not, they'd kind of fold their arms, cross their legs. Oh my goodness, here he goes off in his teacup stuff again. Because that's how we've taught them. The normal kids, they're out there. You hope they don't come across any pressure situation, but equally if they do, you hope they've either learned from their friends and friends at school or their colleagues, but equally important from us, their parents, they would have learned what to do in that situation. And now as they're older, all around the world, I get texts and stuff from all around the world going, Dad, have a look at this. Not a lot of teacup going on here. And the last thing I'll just bring up teacup, which again I saw it operating. I'm from a service family. My dad was in the Royal Air Force. He was a pilot in the Royal Air Force, and so I like the military. I'm used to the military. So when I first got with the England rugby team, I took the team down to train with the Royal Marines. I think whatever country we're from, we're all hugely proud of our armed forces and our armed services. But these guys down there, down in Lympstone, down in Devon, they absolutely believe they're the best. Simple as that. They believe that they don't care what the odds are. They think they can actually win. When you work with them, two things that really strike you. One, these are really young men. and women. These are really young people. The average age of a Royal Marine officer who's fighting for us in wherever, Iraq or Afghanistan or wherever, is just over 21 years old. So they've got no experience. They're amazing athletes, they're great, amazing soldiers, amazing shots, and all this sort of stuff. But their real kind of secret, if it is a secret, is how they think correctly under pressure. And what I learned from the Marines is they spent hours after hours after hours after hours in the classroom going through scenario after scenario after scenario. And that's teacup. That's all we did. What I've just described you with clock, scoreboard, whiteboard. And they go through all this. And we spoke to them at length about one or two of them who'd been to fight and war, and they explained the situation they got into. And you go, wow, how do you get out of that? You couldn't possibly experience that before because you've never been to war before. You're too young. And they just said, oh, we just remember from the classroom, we talked about this, this, and this. And that's how they do it. So this teacup stuff is absolutely key. And again, if you can start to think about this and also share it with other members of staff or other colleagues, then you've got to get real input into how we actually work. So I hope that's answered the Reigate Valley College about thinking correctly under pressure. Yuda Shania. Next question is from the Seaview Trust. Can you tell us your thoughts on collaboration generally and in the workplace, and how do you foster this? So can you tell us your thoughts on collaboration and in the workforce, and how do you foster this? I think collaboration is a great word, and it's not an easy thing to put in place. You can't just sit back and go, let's get everyone kind of collaborate and work together. I think you've already picked up, I'm passionate about the world you guys all work in terms of the education and the learning world, because that is my background. That's why I think I was reasonably successful as a coach, because I understood how to teach, because that's my DNA. I'm a teacher, I'm a coach, but it's the same thing. But one of my key sayings is what I call relentless learning. I'm hugely passionate about what I talk about is relentless learning. But I've coined this the way of learning. I have a process called 3D learning. And this fosters learning, but also fosters collaboration. Now, I haven't a clue where I got 3D learning from. This has come from my business background, my sporting background, my education background. But it's what I use every single day. And I think originally I didn't even know I was doing it this way. But what is 3D learning? The first D in 3D learning is what I call discover. So to discover, and just think of a topic, and I'll use rugby. I'll use rugby because they know what I'm talking about with rugby, I guess. So let's just talk about defending from lineouts as a subject. So there's my subject matter: defending from a lineout in rugby. Think of a subject matter that's close to you. It could be any subject, doesn't matter what it is: education, business, sport. Just think of a subject. The first is discover, and what discover is, I want you to now to discover and try and capture as much information as you possibly can about this subject. So what I'm trying to do here on Discover is get all this knowledge out of your head, get it out of your textbooks, get it out of your computers, get it out of your phones. I'm trying to put this in one place. So we're going to unashamedly capture knowledge. And let's face it, and I've already said, in the world we live in today, in the IT and the internet world, there's knowledge everywhere. There's so much knowledge out there. But I want you to start to actually discover it and capture all this knowledge. So that's the D, the first in 3D learn, discover. And you're going to capture it and hopefully put it in a certain place, but keep it, capture it, and keep adding to it. Once you've got a certain amount of knowledge in place, the second D in 3D learning is what I call distill. So what is distill? Distill is you've got all this knowledge. What I want you now to do is distill it into just a few key points. So out of all this knowledge we've got, all this stuff, what are maybe the 6 absolute key points that if we get these 6 points right, these 6 key points right, we'll do this task right. So if I'm defending from lineouts, but all this knowledge of discover, I know if we do these 6 things right, which we've learned, we'll defend fine from our lineouts. That's a big part. And this must be in simple writing, make it as concise and easy to understand as possible. But there are key points, there are distill. And then the third D in 3D learning is what's called do. So once you know your key points, how do we do them better than anybody else? How do we practice them? How do we rehearse them? How do we train for this? So you have discover all your knowledge, create your key points, and how do we do them? How do we train for this? And it's such a simple process. But what it allows is collaboration, because you get everybody putting in discover, everyone just studying it, learning from it, relentless learning, finding out what they actually are, and then people coming up with really new ideas, new thoughts, how we do this better. One of the, I think, the secrets to coaching and teaching, if you can get your team, your staff, your pupils thinking about this, coming up with new ideas, new thought, how can we do this? And do not underestimate where a new thought, a new idea can come from in terms of the do side of this. How do we practice even better, or even the distill side? This can come from you very young people. And that's what I think good coaching, good teaching is all about. You're kind of engaging these people. And that's what collaboration is. That's how I find I can collaborate best with people, by giving them real kind of ownership, real ways of actually putting their thoughts and knowledge together, sharing with other people, and then as a group, we're really looking at and finding, discover, distill, do. And it makes a massive difference. I even set up a company after the Olympics in 2012. I had this wonderful job with Team GB for 7 years, where I was the director of sport for Team GB in Beijing, Vancouver, and London games. After the games, I set up a company called Hive Learning. And if you've got time, just have a look at Hive Learning, because what Hive Learning is all about 3D learning. It allows you to put all your information and knowledge into this lovely app, this lovely phone we've got here now. Everything goes in there, and you can start to share it with people, and you keep it forever. But you're using the 3D process that is actually underpins relentless learning. So, good question. Next question from the Northern Saints Primary School in Sunderland. How are you getting on through lockdown? First of all, I will say this. One of the things, we probably watched more TV than I would normally do. That's not a lot. But I've watched that program, Sunderland Till I Die. And those of you who've not watched it, it's all about Sunderland Football Club. I love all sports, but I love football. That was a brilliant documentary from Sunderland, and I thought that was just great viewing. So one of the things in terms of lockdown, wasn't all just watching programs like that, but that was a great program. The Last Dance has been on with Michael Jordan. So it's been really good documentaries, not just through the BBC and ITV, but through Amazon and Netflix. So the key thing to me about getting through lockdown, and was when it started, it was clear it was going to go on for a couple of months, maybe even more. Was I was determined myself that when I look back at the end of the 2 or 3 months, I wouldn't say that's been wasted time. And I think what I do, and use that word time again, because what I do, and I plan it the day before, I plan my next day meticulously. What time I get up, what time I'm going to eat, what time I'm going to exercise, what time I'm going to do work, what time I'm going to do golf, whatever I'm doing, but all based at home in the garden. So the whole thing was that time management. Try and plan the programs you're going to watch. Only kind of watch one news program a day. I kind of watch the 10 o'clock news over a cold beer. That's kind of a nice routine to end the day with. Kind of get to bed reasonably early after that. But it's just down to time management and not waking up every morning thinking, okay, what am I going to do today? And the more detailed your timing, I said before about a key attribute to attitude is time management. So I just think the lockdown's been time. I'm certainly fitter than I was 2 months ago. I'm certainly less weight than I was 2 months ago, because I've taken real interest in learning. I think I was already quite on top of that stuff, but even more interest in different sort of foods, vegan food, and all this sort of stuff. I've done a little bit more cooking myself, which my wife is probably regretting, seeing the state of the kitchen after I've finished cooking. So that's it. But time management, catching up some really good educational documentaries, and I did love the Sunderland Till I Die documentary. Okay, I'm just conscious of time. We've got about 6-7 minutes left. Hope everyone's enjoying this. It's making a bit of sense to everybody out there. So this is from St. Godric's Roman Catholic Primary School. COVID-19 has brought a lot of change into the workplace. What do you see as the key facts driving change? I've moved on this one quite quickly, because driving change is about 3D learning. If you just use COVID-19 as your subject matter, discover, distill, do. Get everybody collaborating. What I don't think change is about is it just coming from the top. And I think this is one of the big lessons that hopefully the government may have learned. Because I think, let's be brutally honest here, I think we were, caught a little bit by surprise with the COVID, pandemic. And we shouldn't have been, because the people in power are there to think of this is the teacup moment. This has happened. How are we prepared for it? And we may not have, been able to think of the COVID-19, but you think of a bomb dropping on the UK, gas attacks we've heard about. There has to be things in place. But what we must always be doing is on these subjects is discover, distill, do. What is happening, discovering about all these things. What are the key points and how do we do them better than anybody else? And bang, we should have gone into action like that. So there'll be some key learnings, and I think it's this back to this word collaboration. It's never collaborate, but also you need information coming top down, but most importantly, you need information coming up. I think if there'd been the tools in place for our NHS workers, our care workers, from day one to collaborate up, in other words, to send information up about what's happening, that just wasn't in place. And I think, to be fair, the government's done a great job in this period of time in kind of fast tracking that change of information, which is now happening. I just don't think it was there from day one. So there'll be some key learnings. And the last thing about this is just to make sure everyone's got the tools. And as I keep saying, this thing here, it's obviously it's an iPhone, but it's a hugely powerful device if used correctly, and everyone understands the technology of how to communicate. And I think that will be one of the big learnings out of this. Okay, probably time for another couple of questions. Cardinal Hume Catholic School. You seem a bit of a sports obsessive. Is being an obsessive a good thing? It's really interesting the word obsessive, because obsessive is one of my 8 characters and the attitude. I said attitude, 8 points that I coach. One of them is punctuality. The other one's obsessive. I think often in the English language, if you're called an obsessive person, that's kind of a negative. There's something wrong with you. I pride myself on being an obsessive person. But I promise you, I live a very normal life, happily married, got 3 great kids, all that sort of stuff. But I make no bones about it. I'm completely and utterly obsessive about beating the person I'm competing against. So I'm up against Eddie Jones, John Mitchell, all these great coaches. They're the people. They're my kind of the people I want to beat. And I make no bones about it. I want to be better than them, and I want to win. So I regard myself as a obsessive person. It's all about the attention to detail. The actual definition in the dictionary on obsessive is an idea or thought that continually occupies or intrudes a person's mind. So I repeat it: an idea or thought that continually preoccupies or intrudes a person's mind. I mean, what's the wrong with that? I mean, I think obsession is a great word. Obsession isn't sending emails at midnight or getting to work at 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. It's a passion for detail. It's a passion for discover, to still do. It's detail, detail, detail. I can think of nothing worse than waking up one morning and finding out that one of my major competitors, the people I competed with, have thought about something that I had not thought about or we had not thought about. That would drive me off the deep end. So I think being an obsessive person is a great trait. It's just, as long as you understand what it means, it's just, a single thought or idea occupying someone's mind. I mean, what's wrong with that? So it's just got a bit of a negative side. I think it's a great word. And my last question, we're just on 11:29. I've been told to try and stick closely to 30 minutes. So after being lecturing to everyone about timekeeping, I'm going to try and keep this just about on time, because time is also starting on time, it's also finishing on time, because people have other things to actually do. This one is from St Hilda's Church of England School. My sporting heroes. I'm very clear about that. My still sporting heroes. I've only was the group with the 1966 World Cup football team. I never played rugby until I was 14, 15 years old. My whole background, my whole passion was football. I can remember now, I'll give away my age now, but I was 10 years old watching the World Cup final in 1966 with my parents. My dad was an RAF Linton-on-Ouse in Yorkshire. That's where we were living. He was a training pilot on Chipmunks. I remember watching that game. That had a profound effect on me. Every single one of those players, headed by Bobby Moore, the late Bobby Moore, I was lucky enough to meet, who was just the most fantastic player. Probably my favourite player was Martin Peters, because I played in the midfield. And of course, Geoff Hurst, who scored a hat-trick. But I can name all 11 like that. I know every single one of those players. And I always go out of my way when I go to various sporting dinners, if one of them was there, just to go and have a real chat, because they made a massive difference to me. I think heroes are important in life. They are role models, and that's why I think sport has a real, a real opportunity or a real reason to create role models, because I think young people do look up to role models. They're my 3. headed by Martin Peters and obviously the late Bobby Moore. They were just brilliant players, and I remember emulating them and watching that game, going outside on the Air Force Base. It was just amazing. It was an event. I still remember now, all these years is later, and it's kind of driven me on because I wanted to be like them. I wanted to be someone who was successful and achieved something. I'd love to have done it in football, but that wasn't to be. So I ended up playing rugby, which was probably a lot easier in many ways to get to the top, and ended up playing for England, the Lions, and the highlights of my life, coaching the England rugby team in 2003. But I'd say it all springboard back to 1966 and watching that England World Cup final, and that had a profound effect on me, for my family, and individually. So that's it. We're just gone 11:31. I'm just going to wrap up now and just say, I hope I've answered 8 questions out of about 12 down. So apologies, I didn't get through all the questions, but I wanted to just go into a bit more detail on some of them. I hope this made a bit of sense, because I've had a hugely lucky career and still work hard. I'm still working hard, but people often say that the sport between business, between education, there's no difference. It's all about people. It's all about collaborating, and you are delivering results through people. Whether you're in a school, you're a headmaster, headmistress, you're delivering results through your team, through your staff, to deliver great results through your pupils. When I'm coaching a rugby team or I'm running a business, I'm the headmaster, I guess, but I'm delivering results through my team, through my staff. Delivering results. There's no difference. And I've often people think there's some sort of magic. They're not. Sport, especially, is a business. It's a business. If you're lucky to be involved in it, you're kind of lucky because it may be something you've got a passion about. But teaching is a business, and if you're passionate about teaching, you'll be successful at teaching. And can I just sign off by saying I wish everybody all the very, very best. Thanks for listening to this webinar. There's 1 or 2 things you can take back to your own schools, and the last half hour has been well worthwhile. Stay safe. It's been fascinating listening to what's happening about the return to work protocols, and I just hope they've got their 3D learning in place around those 3D protocols. So I'm signing off now. Have a lovely day, everybody, and stay safe. And thank you so much for listening in to me this morning. So it's Clive Woodward signing off. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye-bye.